Boom! Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session at the Wise Asylum. Anyway, what can we say? Another nice week of weather, not bad at all. We seem to be keeping this summer going a little bit, which has got to be good. But of course, it's doom and gloom at the end of October when the energy prices go through the roof. But never mind that nonsense. Good evening, Moo, Jeff, Debbie. Here we go again. Isn't it just going, quick? It's not the word, it's just quick. Evening, Paul. Joining the dots, hello, and Paul, hello. Wake up the Ray. Is he still asleep, the Ray? Hello, A. Now then. So, not much to report on the old Ukraine, really, apart from Boris the Bombshell. In his final act, he's been running around giving it the big keep going, keep going, keep going, keep it going, keep it going to the old Ukrainians. So they definitely want to keep going. They want to keep this shindig on. Yanks have given Ukraine 11.7 billion for, they say, weapons. I've seen murmurs that Zelensky could well be replaced by a general. I forgot his name. And I couldn't find the piece I got it from, so I couldn't give you his name there, sorry. So that's all going on. Interesting stuff, what can we say? But tomorrow is the big day, is it not? When the Chalker Westminster announces its new Muppet to lead the country into yet more bizarreness and insanity. So you've got that to look forward to tomorrow. How exciting is that? Hello, Debbie is a new kettle. Now I'm missing that because I don't watch telly, so I've not watched that. So I take it that our Boris has been telling everybody to buy new kettles. Yeah, I mean, are they just taking the piss out of everybody out there? Or not? Of course they are. And if anybody sucked into it, which I will, it's just right. I'm at that point now where it's just, okay, that's what you're doing. Carton! I'm watching, and I'll be laughing when it needs a laugh, and unfortunately it's probably going to end in tears, but not mine. So here we go. Anyway, Highlander is one of my all-time favourite films. What a great symbolism of the parts of the human, is it not? You know, because you look at the characters in the Highlander, you've got the sleuth, haven't you? The sleuthy guy who fights in the car part, you know, the detective kind of guy. You've got the black guy who's into the party. Hey man, it's a part of humanity. That's in there. It's a part of us. And then you've got the posh guy, the peacock. You've got Sean Connery. And then you've got the base animal. You've got the Kurgan. You know, and The Island is a superb film in relation to showing you the parts, because there can only be one that can push through this garbage and go out of this place at his end and. No longer will he be coming here again, or as they call it, immortal. Is that not right? That's how it works. It's a great film, brilliant film. Not many people, I don't think, understood it in those terms, but that's exactly how it works. And what a bloody good soundtrack! With the Queen, the band. Because that is one soundtrack and a half, is it not? It is. Who Wants to Live Forever? What a tune. Hello Slipknot, how's it going? So yeah, I agree, Highlander is a fantastic film. So, Ukraine. What else were there to be reported? Not a lot, to be quite honest. The EU, of course, in the wisdom on, of course, the orders of the city, because, of course, London's financial centre controls the entire European economy, and therefore it also controls its prime ministers, etc. So they're all operated according to what London says, the London Temple Crown. And they are, so basically they sanctioned, shot themselves in the foot. Let's sanction Russian gas, and it's now been switched off completely. Nord Stream 1 has gone, it's finished, it's shut off. So of course the EU are now buying off China. But it just so happens that the gas they're buying off China is, of course, Russian gas. So, what are London playing at? What's the inner city playing at to have all our European brothers and sisters? Because they've, like us, have got idiots, children in primary school, imbeciles, running the countries. So, how clever is that? How clever is that, ladies and gentlemen? These supremos in all politics running your countries are absolute gibbons, tapped and demented. And until people start to realise that this British Empire, which isn't the British Empire, of course, it's the Holy Roman Empire, it needs to be seen for what it is. It's running riot everywhere, it's wrecking our nations. And unfortunately, at the moment, the boomers are triggered into Dad's Army mode. Yeah. The period in their life where they all suffered trauma, which was basically from birth because they were born during the war, and then of course were brought up by a very damaged generation, my grandparents, and became the most selfish, self-absorbed little tattlers there's ever been. Rife for the little Nazi games that are going on afoot everywhere, are they not? So what can we say about that apart from, oh yeah, what a load of rubbish. I look 10 years younger. Doesn't matter. Oh, my glasses off? Well, thank you very much. Thank you very kindly. Yeah, don't they do me head in glasses, I have to be honest, but it's like being in Blackpool Illuminations here. Because obviously, to get a better picture, you need the light with these cameras. I suppose if I got a better camera, might solve that issue. So, I did try, I got another camera and I thought, because I always thought it looks better, it's all at eye level, the camera, whereas the Mac camera is just a bit higher. And as the case, I keep forgetting to look at it, so it always looks like I'm talking to somebody else when I've looked back at them. My apologies for last week's live stream where I did get a little bit naughty and expletives galore, I noticed, and I also gave the old jocks a bit of a turn off. But of course, I wasn't talking about the jocks in general, I was talking about the elites, because I believe the jocks have been hammered to death by these elites since they got in, because they police state Glasgow were going on back in the 70s. So the jocks have been hammered for a very, very long time. So of course I wasn't talking about you Scottish persons, just the fruit bats in the castles. So I hope that has been taken as it's meant, but I didn't make it clear last week, so my apologies all round. Now I've picked up some amazing stuff about Edward I, things that we don't know about him. I don't know whether to do that tonight or save that, because during the week I put up together a report for the website, pulling together various prophecies from well-known and some unknown or not very well-known prophets from back in the day for our time today. So I thought we might have a little look at that. So before we do, just while we're continuing with the old Ukraine, let's have a little look at this malarkey. And it says, there's mountain. So this is Western Allies led by UK's blonde bombshell, the Johnson, sabotage tentative Ukraine-Russia peace deal in April. So basically, it kicked off in February. Ukraine were ready to sign up to a peace deal it's just a bit reminiscent to 1914, this, isn't it, when Brits were giving up, we were surrendering, in came the Rothschilds and said, no, don't surrender. Don't do any of that, we're going to get the Yanks in for you, you just got to back Israel, the then coming Israel, as it were. So, same kind of tactic, just different faces, same kind of mentality, but it says, there's mounting evidence that the war in Ukraine could have been over by this point, but key Western backers of Kiev sought to sabotage the potential for peace settlement through negotiations. That's precisely what regional Ukrainian media reports concluded as early as May, soon after the UK's blonde bombshell showed up in the capital on a surprise visit to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time the month prior. For the first time, I don't know whether that's a bit of a misspell, but what? So this is what the blonde bombshell story in Ukrainska Pravda said at the time, but which was almost completely ignored in Western mainstream media. According to Ukrainska Pravda sources close to Zelensky, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, who appeared in the capital almost without warning, brought two simple messages. The first is that Putin is a war criminal and he should be pressured, not negotiated with. So that these are not suggestions, these are orders. A bit like Thatcher ordered George Herbal Walker Bush. They know he weren't allowed to stand down and not get involved in the first Iraq war. He'd better get his shit together and get his boys over there rapido. So again, same thing. Where's it coming? London. Because we can see now that the UK government, where it used to hide the fact that it were operating entirely for the inner city, it's absolutely a fact now, isn't it? And recently there's been stories about how this one particular group tied to the London Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, was basically Boris' his own admission that his bosses were actually the Daily Telegraph. So, yeah, that's no surprise to me at all. But that's it. That in and of itself. Are we not showing here we've got captured states? That's what we're dealing with. All our states have been captured by these privateers or ultimately operating for the bankers. And Vanguard, of course, you know, we see McDonald's, KFC, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all those opposing. They're all coming under Vanguard, everything. You name it, if it's out there, if it's making money, it's still up there, it's Vanguard now running the whole show. So they don't care about competition, they just care that you go to one or the other. So the money, either way, is going up the pyramid. And of course, because you're eating the shit's coming down to the bottom. And I watched an interesting video where these scientists put a McDonald's cheeseburger in a solution with that acid that we find in our stomach. I forgot, it's hydrochloric acid, which is what's in your stomach, I think. And they left it for 2 hours, and you've never seen anything as disgusting in your life. Might be one to seek out if you're sort of partial to a bit of the old MacD's. It certainly didn't impress me in any way, shape or form. So you might want to check that out. Says, according to you said that. He said, and the second is that even if Ukraine, so he came with 2 orders. The second order is that even if the Ukraine is ready to sign some agreements on guarantees with Putin, they, the UK and US, are not. Johnson's position was that the collective West, which back in February had suggested Zelensky should surrender and flee, now felt that Putin was not really as powerful as they had previously imagined, and that here was the chance to press him. Interesting. This could have all been stopped apart from the boy wonder, Boris the bombshell. Look at the state of that fat belly. You know, he should get shoved on. They should both get shoved up fault lines, actually. What do you think? Because Zelensky with that lovely put, oh, that's such a good act. Yeah, Boris couldn't act to save his life, which is why he looks like a scruff. But Zelensky, of course, he's gone right into his acting pose now. Look at me, I'm the innocent holy man, as it were. So the Ukrainian media English language report went on to emphasise that 3 days after Johnson left for Britain, Putin went public and said talks with Ukraine had turned into a dead end. At the time, the Istanbul peace talks, which saw top officials from each warring side gather in the Turkish capital, was hailed in some corners as the quickest way to end the war in Ukraine. According to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who was seeking to mediate between Moscow and Kiev, so he was telling about that. But as the invasion ordered by Putin pressed on, Britain especially was the earliest out front in making large weapons and munitions deliveries to Ukraine via military transport planes in a high priority. UK press reports also took note of the convenient timing of London going all-in hawkish on Ukraine, given Prime Minister Johnson's enduring Partygate scandal at home. Again, recalled the tone of the Ukrainian media following the arrival of the British Prime Minister in Kiev. And it should be noted, Johnson was the first leader of the G7 country to visit, coming 2 weeks after Russian forces withdrew from the suburbs around Kiev. Bit like Churchill, always in there first, giving it the large. And they never asked you, did they? No, did the heck. Again, recall the tone of the no. Following the arrival of British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in Kiev, a possible meeting between Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin has become less likely. Now this week there has been yet more bombshell smoking gun confirmation to emerge on the role of powerful Western countries in thwarting the potential for ceasefire between Russian and Ukraine forces. So ex-national US National Security Council officer confirmed, citing multiple former senior US officials, that Russia and Ukraine agreed in April on a peace deal framework, of Russia withdrawing to pre-war positions and Ukraine promising not to seek NATO membership, and that deal was stopped by UK PM. Now, it isn't the case that the Ukraine are going to be joining NATO. That's been made pretty clear this week by Zelensky. Well, of course, if that happened, then we would be into all-out Third World War, would we not? So that's been put on the cards this week. So I think, like has been said last week, they are going to have to come back to the negotiating table, and that's pretty much absolute the way this is going. Former officials of the US Security Council, Fiona Hill, has co-authored a lengthy essay recounting key moments in Russia's war and Western efforts to aid Ukraine thus far. She lets slip the following key confirmation in the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, which is a satellite to the Round Table. Takes orders from the Royal Institute on International Affairs. And of course, around this Round Table, you've also got the United Nations. You've got the Club of Rome, which controls the entire environmental garbage. And in all cases, in all areas, Kissinger is a major player. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you are aware of that. Of course, the Round Table is what was set up in South Africa by the Rothschilds, Cecil Rhodes, De Beers, etc., from which we get the Rhodes Scholarship, of which Bill Clinton was one. And if you go with Greg Allett's efforts, Clinton's a bastard child of the old Winnie Churchill, so I don't know about that. But I did once, when I was looking into that, I did find an image, funny enough, of Clinton at a particular age, quite young, and it was a spitting image of Fat Willie Boy, the mass murdering pig. So I had to take that on board. Very interesting it was. The disclosure and confirmation from the US side that there will be a tentative agreement on the table for Russia-Ukraine peace is a huge revelation. Again, which will go largely missing from popular mainstream coverage. And of course, the glaring omission from, in Foreign Affairs essay as Boris Johnson's aforementioned direct role in scuttling the potential for peaceful settlement, but what looked to be a finish line moment. Whether or not peace would have ultimately held up will never be known. Well, that's interesting. If Putin were actually going to go back to the pre-war thing, it would that would pretty telling, to be quite honest. That obviously whatever it is Putin wanted to be stopped would have actually obviously been part of that treaty which suggests you're looking at the labs, you're looking at all the other nonsense that we know is going on in what is basically the most corrupt nation on the planet, especially we're talking from 2014. So, okay, is there any more to that? Nope, that pretty much covers that. So I just thought that was interesting. So there he goes, Boris the Bombshell. It's pretty clear that the inner city is obsessed with this war keeping going, which is why you're getting bombarded with absolute falsities, both in the media and, of course, our soldiers directly through their own internal media. You've got to see this for what it is, people. And I've said before, you know, the biggest thing I'm seeing on this is the fact they want all nations on the war footing in readiness for what I see is going to kick off at some point, and maybe the October surprise between Israel and Iran, and then potentially the entire Islamic world in the Middle East. And of course, we don't want to be getting involved in that, do we not? But of course, if we're all militarized, that's exactly what everybody's going to be getting involved with. So, not good, I have to say. What are you guys saying? Buying the new cap. Yeah, we've done that one. I'll look to it. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Give me the prize. Prize? What prize you after? I thought that, but didn't want to see. So I think some sort of letty old moo. Are you? Deborah. Prophet Ray. Where is the Prophet Ray? Where is he? Did he sleep? Has he passed out again? Does he keep passing out now? Is that what the crack is? Anita says, cushions all nice and tidy this evening. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I've done a bit of housekeeping this afternoon. Uva's been out and I've fluffed a few cushions. So, yeah, well spotted. I feel you're a bad influence, prodding me down a dangerous path. He is a bad influence, Deborah, you're quite right. He is very naughty. Mew says, poking the bird, he loves the attention. Well, give him a poke then. Like, the Raymondo. So, instead of going through the, we'll save the Eduardo stuff and crack on with this, because it's actually there's some quite interesting groovy stuff going down in this piece of work. Can you see that okay? Is the letters, are they big enough? And we'll begin. It says, in our times today, as we walk through the valley of death from every orifice, how should we reckon our own actions as we face the overturning of civilization, whether we like it or not? There are many scripts for one to seek in order we can outform our points of reference as we experience the now. There are many because we are many, and with equal access to words written and spoken to match our own frequency. Many take reference from the Bible, or do they? They might be apt to speak of it with lavish tongue, and yet fail to see the actual context, as they swoon in the idea of its cautions without the recognition that they fail on all counts when applying the doctrine to their own existence. Scripture is a message. The diversity of its meaning mirrors the diversity of the hearts of man, each to their own if it gives them succour. But not all hearts need a constant look for the way they live the best they can as they express the comprehension they hold, then apply it to the actions they let loose. It's always helpful if you can find some remnants of a string, or indeed breadcrumbs left by a character from the past, as you traverse through the labyrinth held fast by the bull. The following are a selection of works of prophets by prophets of renown, prophets that may hold a key to keep you, for you to keep the lamp shining at your feet, as you buckle down and face the reality before us, as we cut out the shaft to reveal the old wheat. So the first prophet would be Merlin, and this is Merlin's spell, stolen by Morgana. It says, Merlin saith that in England shall be seen strange things, as preaching of traitors, great rain and wind, great hunger among the common people, great oppression of blood, great imprisonment of many men, and great battle, so that there shall be few or no quiet place to abide in. The princes shall forsake men of the church, lords shall forsake righteousness. Council of the ages shall not be set by, religious men and women shall be thrust out of their houses. The common people for fear shall not know which way to turn. Parents shall be hated by their children. Men of worship shall have no reverence of others. Adultery shall abound among all, with more ill than I can tell of, from which God us defend. And this is the next. That's from the Sunday Prophecies of Merlin, Beckett and others, authors unknown, published in London in 1652. Luxury shall overspread the land, and fornication shall not cease to debauch mankind. Famine shall then return, and the inhabitants shall grieve for the destruction of their cities. In those days the oaks of the forest shall burn, and acorns grown upon lime trees. The Severn shall discharge itself through 7 mouths, and the river Usk burn for several months. Flashes shall die in the heat thereof, or fishes rather, and from them serpents will be born. I think that's an older prophecy, probably once fulfilled. The baths of Babylon, which is the hot springs of Bath, shall grow cold, and the salubrious waters engender death. London shall mourn for the death of 20,000, and the river Thames shall be turned to blood. The monks and the cows shall be forced to marry, and their cry shall be heard upon the mountains of the Alps. That's interesting. The monks and the cows shall be forced to marry, and their cry shall be heard upon the mountains of the Alps. Interesting. I don't know what to make of that. The sea shall rise up in the twinkling of an eye, and the dust of the ancients shall be restored. The dust of the ancients. So does that mean, so like if we take the mud flood scenario, so like we've got lots of places have got this flood of mud burying all sorts of stuff. So if we were to get a bit of a tidal wave at some point and it washed over, and let's say it washed off the top, so would we then see an ancient? That's interesting. Very interesting. And that's from the History of the Kings of Britain, the Prophecies of Merlin by Geoffrey of Monmouth. Interestino. So we now have the next set of prophecies, or Asclepius III, and it's a fragment. So we're talking Hermes, Thoth. Scott translated Asclepius from Latin documents by Apellius. The Greek original has been lost. Asclepius III, in which is found the Hermetic prophecy, is an exposition on the nature of cosmology, and hence on the nature of time and the cycles of life, the nature of the world, destiny, etc. A prophecy of Egypt emerges, given mainly as an example to which express certain philosophical precepts. What follows now is a small fragment from Asclepius III, which contains the prophecy Trismegistus, Hermes thrice born. Do you not know, Asclepius, that Egypt is an image of heaven? Or to speak more exactly, in Egypt all the operations of the powers which rule and work in heavens have been transferred to the earth below. Nay, it should rather be said that the whole cosmos dwells in this our land, as in its sanctuary, and yet since it's fitting, the wise men should have knowledge of all events before they come to pass. You must not be left in ignorance of this. There will come a time when it will be seen that in vain have the Egyptians honoured the deity with heartfelt piety and assiduous service, and all our holy worship will be found bootless and ineffectual. For the gods will return from the earth to heaven. Egypt will be forsaken, and the land which was once the home of religion will be left desolate, bereft of the presence of its deities. This land and region will be filled with foreigners. Not only will men neglect the service of the gods, and Egypt will be occupied by Scythians or Indians, or by some such race from the barbarian countries thereabout. In that day will our most holy land, this land of shrines and temples, be filled with funerals and corpses. To thee, most holy Nile, I cry to thee, I foretell that. Do you weep at this, Asclepius? There is worse to come. Egypt herself will have yet more to suffer. She will fall into a far more piteous plight, and will be infected with yet more grievous plagues, And this land which once was holy, a land which loved the gods and wherein alone in reward for her devotion the gods designed to sojourn upon earth, a land which was the teacher of mankind in holiness and piety. This land will go beyond all in cruel deeds. The deeds will far outnumber the living, and the survivors will be known for Egyptians by their tongue alone. But in their actions they will seem to be men of another race. O Egypt, Egypt of thy religion, nothing will remain but an empty tale, which thine own children in time to come will not believe. Nothing will be left but graven words, and only the stones will tell of the piety. And in all that day men will be weary of life, and they will cease to think the universe worthy of reverent wonder and worship. And so religion, the greatest of all blessings, for there is nothing, nor has been, nor ever shall be, that can be deemed greater boon, will be threatened with destruction. Men will think it a burden and will come to scorn it. They will no longer love this world around us, this incomparable work of God, this glorious structure which he has built, this sum of good, made up of things of many diverse forms, this instrument whereby the will of God operates in that which he has made. My apologies. Ungrudgingly favouring man's welfare. So basically he's saying in it that this earth was set up for our welfare. All we had to do was look after it, not dominate it. And yeah, hard all. Favouring his man's welfare. This combination and accumulation of all the manifold things that can call forth the veneration, praise and love of the beholder. Darkness will be preferred to light. The death will be thought more profitable than life. No one will raise his eyes to heaven. The pious will be deemed insane, and the impious wise. The madman will be thought a brave man. That's about last 1,500 years, isn't it? And the wicked will be esteemed as good. As to the soul and the belief that it is immortal by nature, or may hope to attain immortality, as I have taught you, all this they will mock, and will even persuade themselves that it is false. No word of reverence or piety, nor utterance worthy of heaven and of the gods of heaven will be heard or believed. And so the gods will depart from mankind, a grievous thing, and only evil angels will remain, who will immingle with men and divide the poor wretches by main force into all manner of reckless crime, into wars and robberies and frauds and all things hostile to the nature of the soul. Yeah. Then will the earth no longer stand unshaken, and the sea will bear no ships. Heaven will not support the stars in their orbits, nor will the stars pursue their constant course in heaven. All voices of the gods will of necessity be silenced and dumb. The fruits of the earth will rot, the soil will turn barren, and the very air will sicken in sullen stagnation. After this manner will old age come upon the world. Religion will be no more, all things will be disordered and array, all good will disappear. But when all this has befallen, Asepius, then the Master and the Father God, the first before the Maker of that God, who first came into being, will look on that which has come to pass, and will stay the disorder by the counterworking of his will, which is the good. He will call back to the right path those who have gone astray. He will cleanse the world from evil, now washing it away with water floods, now burning it out with fiercest fire, or again expelling it by war and pestilence. And thus he will bring back his world to its former aspect, so that the cosmos will once more be deemed worthy of worship and wondering reverence. And God, the maker and restorer of the mighty fabric, will be adored by the men of that day with increasing hymns of praise and blessing. Such is the new birth of the cosmos. It is a making again of all things good and holy and awe-striking restoration of all nature, and it is wrought in the process of time by the eternal will of God. God's will has no beginning, It is ever the same, and it is now. And is it now is. Even so, it has ever been, without beginning, for it is the very being of God to purpose good. So, what do you say to that? So it's interesting because when you have a bit of an idea of how the Egyptians sort of like lived, that one of their main sort of theological tenets, which has been carried forth in all religions, is prayer. In that, if you spoke of a great man that was down here, when they've gone, it will give him breath in the heavens and keep him that there. We call that egregore. If you're aware of the occult, it's your ancestors. Again, that's another term, but it's speaking of the same thing. So when you look at Egypt, and you know, so different dynasties would wreck a previous dynasty. They'd chop the noses off all the. That's so that people wouldn't speak that name again, and destroy the breath in heaven. So that was quite interesting. I thought that you might like that. Now this is extra interesting. This is Mother Shipton, a Yorkshire lass, a wise woman of her day. She was called Ursula Southiel, and she was born in 1488 in a small town in Yorkshire, England. She became known for her ability to foretell the future at about the age of 24. Her predictions, typical of those of the time, were presented in riddles, often in verse, and she died in bed in 1561. So you've got Henry VIII, 7th, etc. cracking on around the time this lady passed on. So do you lot having to say anything? Sean, I sent you a message on Messenger. I found this interesting on utilities. Well, thank you very kindly. Oh, is it on the Faceache? Okay, I can't open Faceache while we're doing this because I have to open Brave and it sends the CPU up beyond the stars. Louise, hello Louise, how are you? Right, so Mother Shipton, and it is in verse, so we'll see how good I am at this. Probably shit. He says, and now a word in uncouth rhyme of what shall be a future time. Then upside down the world shall be, and gold found at the root of a tree. All England's sons that plough the land shall oft be seen with book in hand. The poor shall now great wisdom know. Great houses stand in far-flung vale, all covered o'er with snow and hail. A carriage without a horse will go, disaster fill the world with woe. So that's your cars, isn't it? Yeah. Carriage without a horse, or even probably the train was first, wasn't it? The steam train. In London Primrose Hill shall be, in centre hold a bishop's see. Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye. Post, internet, yeah. And water shall great wonders do, how strange and yet it shall come true. Through towering hills proud men shall ride, no horse or ass move by its side. Oh, sure. Shipping, is it? Towering hills proud men shall ride. What's that then? Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk. And in the air men shall be seen, in white and black and evergreen. A great man then shall come and go, for prophecy declares it so. In water iron then shall float, as easy as a wooden boat. Gold shall be seen in stream and stone, in land that is yet unknown. Interesting. Was she talking? What's she talking about? So she's 1500s. What's she talking about there? A land yet unknown. Interesting. And she's obviously speaking of iron ships. In water iron then shall float. Yeah. As easy as a wooden boat. And England shall admit a Jew. You think this strange, but it is true. That Jew that once held in scorn shall of a Christian then be born. Christian Zionism. Yeah. Clever. A house of glass shall come to pass in England, but alas, alas, a war will follow with the work, where dwells the pagan and the Turk. Is that the Crimea? These states will lock in fiercest strife and seek to take each other's life, when north shall thus divide the south and eagle build in lion's mouth. Then tax and blood and cruel war shall come to every humble door. An eagle build in lion's mouth. So it's that reference to Israel. 3 times shall lovely sunny France be led to play a bloody dance. Before the people shall be free, 3 tyrant rulers shall there be, shall she see. Because it did all kick off in France. We were right to battle against France back in the medieval days. You know, there were a lot. I mean, actually, when you look at it, it wasn't actually France. It was the Normans, what they'd set up in Normandy. Because I think they were just a bit more than just, let's just say they were Vikings. There were a lot of different aristocracies sort of aimed for northern France. And so it wasn't actually the French and English aristocracy doing battle. It was this other group, these Normans. But then it did end up where, as these Normans took over France, then they started attacking England like you. So France were basically the first bad boys before England pretty much got shafted after the Civil War. 3 rulers in succession be, each springs from the different dynasty. Then when the fiercest strife is done, England and France shall be as one. Yeah. The British olive shall next then twine, so that's the British Queen, in marriage with a German vine. Men walk beneath and over streams, so that's tunnels and bridges. Fulfilled shall be their wondrous dreams. Well, yeah, the combination of the German and English did bring about the Industrial Revolution, did it not? For in those wonders of far-off days, the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men and trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow, as witches do on broomsticks now. I think that's cause. And roaring monsters with man atop, does seem to eat the verdant crop. And men shall fly as birds do now, and give away the horse and plough. There'll be a sign for all to see, be sure it will be certain be. Then love shall die, and marriage cease, and nations wane as babes decrease. Ho ho ho! And wives shan't fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. If that's not an absolute description of Fruitbat United, yeah, look at that again. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane as babes decrease, and wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. That's pretty much where we're at, is it not? In 1900, you want to be listening to this, youngsters, because that's what it's talking about, your generation. It's talking about a lot of my generation and the baby boomers, to be quite honest, because the baby boomers kicked off all the filth and the selfish me stuff. Divorce, birth control, abortion, homosexuality for everybody as normal. You couldn't look for a better way to stop procreation than everything that's come from entertainment since the 1950s. Can you not? Nothing. You can't find anything better. It's impossible. Hello, Jesus is Luke Skywalker. How are you doing? When pictures seem alive with movements free, when boats like fishes swim beneath the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world, deep drenched in blood, shall die. That's probably World War One and Two. For those who lived the century through, that's 20th century, I think, in fear and trembling this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and the wild fens. Oh, we haven't done that yet, have we? For storms will rage and oceans roar when Gabriel stands on the seashore, on sea and shore. And as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new are born. So I think that's what we've got coming. Yeah. So that's the end of the last century, isn't it, I think? So that's coming. For storms will rage and oceans roar. Oh, I've done that. A fiery dragon will cross the sky. Phoenix, the thunderbird. Yeah. 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6th heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar and earthquakes split the plain to shore. And flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. He bares his teeth and fights and kills, and secrets food in secret hills. And ugly in his fear he lies, to kill marauders, thieves and spies. Man flees in terror from the floods, and kills and rapes and lies in blood. And spilling blood by mankind's hands will stain and bitter many lands. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on, to apply himself too late, for mankind has earned the deserved fate. His masked smile, his false grandeur, will serve the gods their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee, king, lord, and serf. There we go. But slowly they are routed out to seek diminishing water spout, and men will die of thirst before the oceans rise, the mount, the shore, and lands will crack and rend anew. You think it strange, it will come true. And in some far off distant land, some men of such a tiny band will have to leave their solid mount and span the earth, those few to count, who survives this unreadable, and then begin the human race again. But not on land already there, but on the ocean bed stark, dry and bare. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon tails go sweeping by. So he's talking about those that are going to survive through this whatever at whatever time won't be so on lands that we know of today. It'll be on new lands that rise out of the ocean. So that's very interesting, because everything else is going to be bombasted with sulphurs, all poisons, etc. Nothing's going to grow. The only place where life's going to start again is going to be on these clean, new, risen earths, land masses. That's interesting. But the land that rises from the sea will be dry and clean and soft and free of mankind's dirt, and therefore be the source of man's new dynasty. There we go. And those that live will ever fear the dragon's tail for many a year. But time erases memory. You think it strange, but it will be. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes to view, and spew out men of like unknown, to mingle with the earth now grown, cold from its heat, and these men can enlighten the minds of future man. So there you go. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes anew. Yeah? And spew out men of like unknown. So he's going to... But the men, the classism as men here. Yeah? It's interesting. What is a silver serpent? It doesn't suggest a serpent coming out of the sky. Does a serpent's don't? they're on the earth. So a silver serpent comes to view. That would suggest something coming from underground, would it not? Yeah, certainly not coming from the sky, is it? And teach mankind again. I mean, if that's not the basis of every single culture, yeah, everything. So, you know, at this stage, if you're starting to see this kind of stuff, it doesn't matter what religion you're holding, what culture you're from, what political system you think you're in, whatever you're doing, what this is showing you is that you're up your own arse, full of shit. Because everything you pretend to be, you are actually the opposite. And until you start to recognise that in yourself, like I did many years ago, that's where your timeline's set. You're on it, you've done it, deserved. Because the thought forms for you now, but one day you're going to put it into cold-blooded action. It says, these verses were on the outer wrapping of the scrolls. That's next. It says, I know I go, I know I'm free. I know that this will come to be. Secreted this, for this will be found by a later dynasty. A dirty maid, a bonny lass, shall kick this tone as she does pass, and give generations she shall breed, before one male child does learn to read. A dirty maid, a bonny lass, shall kick this tone as she does pass. So, from that time on, it's going to be quite a while before... So basically everyone's going to go back to dumbass. There's going to be 5 generations of dumbness. Ooh, ugh, ugh. It's going to be that kind of stuff again. Back to journey to the centre of the earth and all that kind of garbage. And it's 5 generations until a child learns to read. So that's interesting. So if you ever wanted to learn how we know this stuff, it's imparted to us at certain times by the universe. Oh, interesting. And only when this comes to be will mankind read this prophecy. But one man's sweat, another's bane, so I shall not have burned in vain. And that's Mother Shipton. And there's another section, and it was kept in a separate jar. And it says, the signs will be there for all to read, when man shall do most heinous deed. Man will ruin kindle lives by taking them as to their wives. Yeah? A murder foul and brutal deed, when man will only think of greed. And men shall walk as if asleep. He does not look, he may not peep. And iron men the toll shall do, and iron cart and carriage too. The king shall false promise make, and talk just for talking's sake. And nations plan horrific war, the like that's never seen before. And this, I would suggest, is exactly where we're at. The kings shall false promise make. They've been doing that for quite some time, have they not? And taxes rise and lively down, and nations wear perpetual frown. Yet greater sign there be to see, as man nears latter century. Their sleeping mountains gather breath, and spew out mud and ice and death. An earthquake swallow town and town, in lands as yet to me unknown. And so that suggests not Europe, not here, not the Americas, does it not? Because unyet to her unknown. And this is late 14s into the 1500s. It's interesting, because America were known then. So she's saying lands to her unknown. So, interesting. And Christian 1 fights Christian 2, and nations sigh, yet nothing do. And yellow men great power gain from mighty bird with whom they've lain. Dun, dun, dun. And that started with the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah, how's that? The Christian fights Christian 2, and nations sigh, yet nothing do. And yellow men great power gain from mighty bird with whom they've lain. That's China and Russia. It's not Russia and Japan, is it? They were scrapping. That is clearly a verse for now. I'm from, since the Bolshevik cracked on. These mighty tyrants will fail to do. They fail to split the world in two. but from their acts a danger bred, an augur, leaving many dead. So there's going to be a war. It's on, it's coming, but they fail to achieve what they're trying to achieve. But obviously, there's going to be a major nuclear conflagration, or maybe, it says, but from their acts a danger bred, an augur, leaving many dead. That sounds to me like biological warfare is going to really go with this. So this is going to end in that. But at least we can all say, all right, they fail. They fail miserably to split the world in two like they're trying to do. So that's interesting. And physics find no remedy, for this is worse than leprosy. Or many signs for all to see the truth of this true prophecy. I thought that was very interesting. And very precise. And from old Blighty, who just over to fence over in Yorkshire. Good day, Sean, says Jesus, Luke Skywalker. Good to see you already Monday morning here in Australia. Indeed it is, sir. Oh, you're up early. What is it, going up for 7 o'clock? Well done, you. Nice one. Debbie says she's cheerful, but isn't she? Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense when you look at it properly. Jason from Arcade said it's 2156-ish. Can't remember exact date the next big phoenix to destroy the Earth. Yeah, it's definitely a while off. So most people that are alive here today, even the babies being born, are not necessarily going to be born when this time actually carries out, but they're going to be going through this time where everybody is just full of hate. Because, you know, people in other countries now hating. It's just ridiculous that that is exactly where we're at. We're at that. And that's what happens, isn't it? When there's trouble, people just start killing each other for what they've got. Which is why when you look back at history, it's all about forts, enclosed towns, enclosed cities, castles. It had to be, because there were just marauders, bands of marauders everywhere, and sometimes some of them are grouped together. And you start to build armies, and you know, and how many centuries did that go on? You know, millennia. So once you've had your time and you've failed, it starts again. And it does start again. With saying back to basics, and it takes a long time. I mean, we're so blessed to have lived in this last 200 years, you know. Steam, so that's travel sorted out. Then we've got energy into your homes, we've got transportation. To today we've got cars. I mean, how amazing. What a time we're living in. And nobody appreciates exactly what it is we have. Because they're all hooked up in these hatred systems that give credence to the hatred. And I put that down to Christians, Jews, Muslims, everybody. They're all basically just masking. They're in these religions because they're full of hate, but it gives them a mask of to themselves of morality. It's like it's okay because I'm not doing this. My God said I can do it, and I must do it, and I have to do it. But then it's not. It's your imam, it's your rabbi. It's your priest, your vicar, you know, your pastor. Them are the people that are pushing this in your head. You know? And it doesn't matter what you say. When it comes to here, lads, you're all off the mark so much, it's frightening. And as it says there, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Wow, exciting. Can you say adventures are calling? Yeah, I've watched a couple of Jasons lately. I stopped watching for a while. And I have to say, slowly as you watch him, he does sort of explain some of his overall thesis a lot more pertinently. And, you know, this guy's done his own work. This guy hasn't come to his conclusions willy-nilly. You know what I mean? This guy's really done his own work, which he can. He had plenty of time to do that. So, but what a good choice and a way to use your time. You know, the guy's in my books, as sound as they come. You know, if people are judging him on his past, which some do, well, more fool you, because you're not going to see it. You know, you're not going to see what you need to see. We all have histories. You know, some of us have done things that we really don't want to, we wish we hadn't done, but everything's there as an experience for you. It's what you do in relation to your experience. Do you carry it on? Do you hate yourself? Do you learn from it and move on and know that you're not going to be doing that kind of stuff again? But this guy is good, and the more I watch him, the only thing that I'm looking forward to him explaining is he speaks about the pyramid, and in relation to it, at some point, it's going to be reactivated. I'd like to know what grammar he has that's giving him that idea, and how he sees that operational, how that's going to pan out. That'd be interesting. The only part of his thesis that so far I haven't in depth watched or understood any data about what he's talking about. But that's not to say he hasn't done it. He does say often. You know, he's made a lot of videos, and it's in those videos, but I'm too busy to focus to it all the time. But I really do like what he's saying. And now he's started to be a bit clearer in relation to these 138 cycles are not calamity cycles, because I think a lot of people thought it were. It's a 138 cycle that's going to hunt down the worst of the worst. So, like, you look at these floods in Pakistan today, and I think the way we lose sight of this, that this is actually being ordained from way beyond our own capacity. So climate change, volcanic, etc. All this stuff is not, it's not because man's making it happen. Man's made it happen in the ways behaved for the last 2,000 years. All man in all places, you know. That's what's brought us to this. So you look at, and I've said, you know, 2040, okay, but I don't think it's at that time. I think it's a full process during the 138. So each 138 cycle, it'll be happening slowly in different places, and then eventually the area that's really showing itself to be completely opposite to the creative force gets annihilated, gets attacked, gets snotted. And look at what's happening in Pakistan. There's some terrible things going on there, but in these last 20 years, since 9/11, the fanaticism relative to hating the West has grown to ridiculous proportions. And you can see that transferring into a lot of the immigrants that are here. And those who were born here as well, they're picking it up. So it makes sense to me that area is picking up what it's attracted to itself. And of course, now we've got that mindset here. We're still civilized here, you know, us natives, Western natives, we're not retaliating, even though we know what's going on. We know what kind of mindset's all around us. We know what they want to do if they can get away with it. But still, you know, we don't pull ourselves down to nonsense. But militia mind, you have to start to prepare yourself for these things to start to expand and get bigger. If the Muslims themselves can't come to terms with the data such as I've brought to the attention, and other data that they need to look at, that is clearly what the Sharia is promoting, but is not in sync with the Quran. And so obviously if you're submitting to the Sharia, believing that you're operating and submitting to the Quran, you're going to be in for a shock because you're not, and that's where you're going to fall foul. So it definitely has made it a bit clearer in relation to this 138 cycle, just operating constantly, and it's all over the place seeking out the main negative kind of shit is going on. And you know, with all these wars that have gone on in this last, well, let's just say from 1600s, once they got the Bank of England established, because the Bank of England only role from that moment on was to try and get England into a war with France, so that we had to borrow money from it, because the governments of the day said, don't be stupid, we don't want your interest, it's crap, we're not paying that kind of stuff. But, you know, once they were kicking off wars with France, both France and England had to borrow respectively from the central banks, and that's what began the problem. So war is the currency of the central bankers. It always has been, because wars necessitate borrowing, and then of course you're building debt, and these bums call it in. They don't play the Jubilee, do they? Although I watched a very interesting, I've watched half of this interesting video, where this guy was speaking in terms of, this guy was obviously an high-level investment banker, but he was also well-versed with theology, with the biblical text, with specifically the Judaic text. And he's speaking in terms of the way that these elite bloodlines have had it operational, when they're talking about jubilees, that every now and again, so basically these bloodlines, they secured the land through the crown, etc., etc. Then the crowns of each respective nation would lease land, it'd sell property, or etc., etc., over maybe even 1,000 years' time, and then they were going to have these jubilees, these reset periods, whereas what they actually do is call back all that's been sold and leased through their entire ancestry back into themselves. So that the idea of a jubilee for the bloodlines is not to repatriate and remove debt from the masses. It's to pull back everything that they own from the beginning, or the minute they made that first claim of right on land. And now, how twisted does that make things in relation to, you would say, the church? But I've said it before. The church that was isn't the church we've known since the Crusades. It's a completely different animal, because the Carolingians basically became it through the monasteries from the early 900s, 909 precisely. So what they were doing in trust for the people became something completely different through all the years from the 9th century. So this is after Alfred, you know what I mean? This is after all the problems that we'd had here as this new church started to thrust its wing in here. And thrusting the moneylenders in here, etc., etc., which Edward I was actually fighting against. So I'm not suggesting Edward I was, a font of angelic expression, but he's been given a bad rap, and been given a bad rap for a reason. Because from whatever orifice you study, you're only getting the Braveheart garbage, which is completely incorrect. There are parts of it, of course, that are correct, but we'll not get into Edward until we can give it a good hour's session. So maybe we'll look at doing that next week. But it's interesting. It's very interesting when you actually look at things that we didn't know, or that are not readily available in relation to Edward I. Because I class him as a true king of England, because that's what he, in all his accounts, supported. And he was a fervent member of Christendom as well as a king, so he was running his kingdom in accordance with Christendom. And his wife, I would say, was the big part of that, Eleanor. And of course, you got Charing Cross, and he set up 9 crosses on the pathway when his wife was being buried. The guy were, and he was never right after that. Him and his wife actually loved each other immensely. And he had a ton of kids. He had kids all over, sure, but most of them actually didn't survive past his actual lifespan. Which, from what I've seen in my time, so much killing and murder goes on in these courts, these royal courts, of offspring of the actual monarchs. And you suppose you got a taste of that if you watch Game of Thrones. But this went on really severely, and Queen Anne, 19 children she lost to miscarriage and stillbirth, while Sarah Churchill was a chambermaid. And I've looked and studied William and Anne. Of course, he did some pretty shit things, did William, when he first came in. But that once Mary, in my opinion, had obviously given him the English ideology and how England operated. For me, you can see that they did start to work against this Venetian shit, this Prussian garbage. And there's also some new stuff on the Prussia Gate stuff as well, which it's too long for me to do a few things on. So what I'll probably do is, because I know it bores some people, but it is important if you want to get to grips with what it is we're actually facing, because it can be stopped, this madness. It can be stopped if enough people get to grips with it. And of course, now that we've lost a lot of the wasters, the useless people, we're going to be left with more and more people with vigour, virile males, and hopefully women are going to start realising that they're stupid and they need to start moving back into the feminine energy, which is where they get their power. You don't get your power from being a male and wearing pants and trying to copy males. Females get their power from the feminine energy. You know what I mean? And then the male's job is to protect it. In a relationship, partnership, whatever way it is. And that the only way you're going to get through this next kind of thing is if your family unit is solid. It has to be, because things are going to get so... It might sound a bit iffy to some people, this kind of talk now, and what Mother Shipton's saying. But it is going that way. It's going to go that way. Do you know what I mean? Which is why intelligence have completely and utterly created a position where they control almost all criminal activity with this informing network. This is what's going on. This is why you're starting to see people now with shotguns riding, shooting. These people are already working for these police intelligence, so they know they're safe. But they're only safe while police say they're safe. They're not safe ultimately. It's a false security, in my opinion. Absolutely. So, yeah. He says the CPU was robbed from the Great Pyramid. Yeah, it's possible. Well, you see, but what I'm saying is, so unless there's actually a machine of some description within its structure, or indeed that the actual mechanics of a machine of some description is underground, then I'm not so sure that whatever it was can actually be put back into a position where it can be used, because we couldn't build the pyramid today if we tried. And from where it's looking, our future is going to go on a big decline before it comes back to any kind of raising of technology. However, I don't know. It has to be seen. So it's the only part of his thesis that at this point I haven't understood what he's saying, what his data, where he's got his data from, and that's just in relation to the actual pyramid itself. But more or less everything else now, I have a good take on what it is he's saying, and I like it a lot. I think he's done us a great thing in having to spend that time where he did, and being a wise guy, a wise chap, and putting all his effort into learning this. It's good. So he gets my full support, does the guy. Absolutely he does. I just noticed a lot of people he's talking to for me are a bit out there sometimes, but then some of them are pretty savvy and they seem to be okay. But I like the guy. I think he's a good one. I think he's doing a good job. Now then, so this is where you get into Shambhala, the inner earth, Nepal, Tibet. Now, I just want to run this by you because this is exceptionally interesting information, because people will say, what the hell happened with the Germans? What created this race to move away from its own cultural heritage and pick up the Indian Sanskrit and then claim ownership of it? And obviously because it didn't own it, it went up its own arse. What was the cause of that? Where's that come from? So, about 1820, right, I'm going to have a fag. Sorry guys, I don't like smoking while I'm having it, but to be fair, I could do with a fag. I don't want to... I rush. If I start needing a fag, I rush. But I don't want to rush. So, about the 1820s, they found a connection between Sanskrit alphabet and the Old Germanic. Okay, and still today we don't know which came first, right? But I think we probably do know which came first, but we don't for sure. Now, I think it's the Aryan language. One side of it went through east and the other ended up going up to the north. Yeah, which is why we're Germanic and Norse, Scandinavian. So this is what went on. At the time, you've got to think 1820s, and you've got France, you've got England, with a supreme historical pedigree to fall back on when they were pushing their noses around the world, bigging themselves up as fantastic and amazing. And Germany didn't have that. Germany only really had an history from the Teutonic Knight time, when they were actually taking part in Crusade, and then obviously taking over Russia. Taking over Europe and Russia as the Prussians. Okay, so the Germans around 1820 were shy on historical context in relation to something they could parade as, look, what a great race we are. So when this came about, that they tied the two languages, the alphabets as similar, the Germans jumped all over it, the anthropologists, okay, the elites. Because then what they started to do were take the Sanskrit as their own, as though it was their own, and then they started to reform it. Now, if you understand this from an occult perspective, you would be saying to yourself, this is how they brought the Indian gods into the German race, and obviously they caused havoc. But because the Germans were lying all the time about it, to make it become their, so that then the Germans became the master race, yeah, the Aryans. They did a lot of fibbing, a lot of lying, and basically nicked it. Well, it were inverse, weren't it? And look what it created. It created the destructive aspect of Shiva, did it not? Which I thought were very interesting, and this is why you get so many of the like the swastika, which we know is we can take back to Sanskrit. We know that the swastika denotes the travel of the Ursa Major around the pole star in the full year. That is the swastika itself, which then suggests, does it not, that when the ancients are talking about sun, the centre of the universe, they're talking about the pole star, not the big bright yellow ball in the sky. They're talking originally that the centre of the universe was the pole star, which is why the swastika, which is the pan shape, the Ursa Major going around it, that's where it comes from. Because in some traditions it's classed as the sun, I mean, it's not the sigil for it, but anyway, there we have that. So I thought that were interesting. So that where they got their theology from, the Germans, which created the Third Reich and all the dark occult stuff, Otto, etc., is basically they nicked it, and its origins is the dark priestcraft over in India. So interesting. So now when we get into this Agartha stuff, which ties into that, it says Prophecies of the King of Agartha. And there we have a little picky, and it denotes it as the inner earth, doesn't it? For many centuries, the mysterious and mystical tradition of Agartha and its ruler, the king of the world, has existed in Tibet and Mongolia. Agartha is believed by many to be a real world existing under the high plateau in the mountains of Central Asia. It is said to be a series of huge caverns with secret entrances all over the earth. Andant tribes sometimes entered and have maintained a hidden civilization to this very day. Ancient tribes. This underground version of Shangri-La still exists, according to belief, and whenever the king of the world makes prophecies, the birds and the animals on the surface suddenly become silent. Well, they certainly become silent when you have a solar eclipse. That was definitely the thing I noticed in 1999 when we had one over here. Hundreds of years ago, the king of the world uttered a prophecy, which, counting from the time it was purportedly given, falls as do so many other predictions within the latter part of the 20th century. So, if we're talking underworld, they certainly opened it up, didn't they, through the Third Reich, as Napoleon did in Egypt. Men will increasingly neglect their souls. The greatest corruption will reign on earth. Men will become like bloodthirsty animals, thirsting for the blood of their brothers. The crescent, Islam, will become obscured, which is what I've said. This is exactly what's happened. And they don't see it because they're not paying attention. But right now, because you're submitting to the Sharia, Islam has become obscured. Because you're following the Sharia and it's not in tune with the Quran. It says the crescent, Islam, will become obscured. But also, the crescent originally is the symbol of Sophia, which is wisdom. So we could also use that as the crescent, or wisdom, will become obscured. Yeah? So, don't take that as an affront on Islam, or an attack on Islam, although that is exactly what's happened because they took it on. They took on the crescent. Not the original Muslims, but the converted groups that created the sultanates once they took over Byzantium, adopted the crescent moon, and then converted to Islam. So it could very well be talking about wisdom. The crescent, or wisdom, will become obscured, and its followers will descend into lies and perpetual warfare. The crowns of kings will fail. Now, we can use both sides, but when you get to the next part of that, he's specifically talking about Islam, because it says the crescent will become obscured and its followers, which is the Muslims, will descend into lies and perpetual warfare. Have they not? I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. When you look at the history of Islam, it is all war. It is, and we can't deny that. But this is clearly saying and making point that your religious idea, your beliefs, not the religion itself, has become obscured and you're descending into lies and perpetual warfare. The crowns of kings will fall. There will be a terrible war between all the earth's peoples. Entire nations will die. Hunger, crimes unknown to law, formerly unthinkable to the world. The persecuted will demand the attention of the whole world. The ancient roads will be filled with multitudes going from one place to another. The greatest and most beautiful cities will perish by fire. Families will be dispersed. Faith and love will disappear. The world will be emptied. Within 50 years, there will be only 3 great nations. Then, within 50 years, there will be 18 years of war and cataclysms. Then the peoples of Agartha will leave their subterranean caverns and will appear on the surface of the earth. So we're not talking necessarily about aliens coming in spacecrafts, although let's not pretend that there aren't in existence crafts that we don't understand, that are unidentified, and I've had an experience as well. So I don't deny the idea of extraterrestrials, far from it. I'd be a fool to do so. But the narrative that's being pushed is garbage. It's utter shit. And of course, one of the biggest protagonists of that would be Mr. David Icke. The same guy who's laying siege against the Rhesus negative as cause. Now, let me just put this before you, because I'm Rhesus negative, and I know a lot of Rhesus negative people. We tend to be able to, we know, it is the best way I could say it. But I did present it last week that when I left, what I felt with the mystery school, what I also realised very quickly, because they made it clear it was so, is that I'd escaped the control. Now, I've seen this for many years when I was studying the bloodlines, that what actually happened when this dark craft took over Christendom, what they did to keep their power was to use the then bloodlines that were operating the kingdoms. in order that it didn't rattle the populations too quick to the debauchery that were actually going on. So they've captured the Rhesus negative completely, and they've got the majority of them fixed between France and northern Spain. Because I know in the occult, and anybody that's in the occult know that the Rhesus negative elites were kicked out of this New World Order priestcraft system because they wouldn't let go of the original morality. So they were kicked out of it. They weren't even included after that. They were kicked out. But the rest they've captured. And so those that are in the West, like me, born of the same bloodlines, were captured from the minute we're born. And not only do they do that, well, another way they capture them is swapping babies at birth. And they do it specifically with Rhesus negative, which is why a lot of us tend to be born into families where we think, what the fuck is this all about? What? It's that kind of thing. And that goes on, and this is the way that they've been able to capture the Rhesus negative. And, especially the warrior types, because you're the ones that are running in the SAS, you're the one in the SPS, you're the one in the special forces, because of that extra factor that we do seem to have if we use it. So you're captured is the best way to describe it. All of you. And this is where you've set up a lot of these industries, because they know you'll be attracted to them, because the intelligence that you are will pull you in to that kind of an existence. So you're captured if you are Rhesus negative. What you need to be doing now is looking at how you're captured. How have they got you operating for this bullshit, while all the while hiding and fronting the real dark priestcraft. So yeah, the blue bloods, which I am, but at the moment it's being presented as though we are the font of all evil, but they've used it and they've bred into the lines as well. Yeah, that's what they've been doing all this time. This is why they're obsessed with breeding and changing the names of what they are to cover what they are. And then what they learned many years ago from Egypt times is if you breed into you can breed. So in Africa, you could breed your line into this dark line. You can breed it into the darker races, and then within 3 generations, that offspring will be totally black, thus working in your nation and accepted by you because you think is one of you, but they're not. So this is where the obsession with breeding programs goes on. It's all about creating their own infiltrators into your nations, and thus captured your nation. So this is how it is. So the blue bloods are not running this; they're captured and fronting it. That's what David Icke's not recognising, and most people, if it carries on going down this path, it doesn't let RH negative off the hook, because if you're in the SAS now and you've done things and you've done it for the dark side, so to all intents and purposes, you're not exactly a full shilling, are you? You're off track. But what I'm saying to you is because you've been captured. This is why they're obsessed with bloodlines, because different bloodlines have remnants of the older races' genetics. And as we can see, you look at any history, they've devolved humankind. Back in the day, they had far better ways of living it, like I was going through last week, that being very in tune with nature isn't necessarily what you think it is, which is why you don't recognise it when it opens itself up to you. And mark my words, nature chooses you. It's not you can't choose all of a sudden. It will decide whether you're eligible to communicate with the nature spirits, as it were. Okay, and there are many different groups, different races, different breeds, different purposes. There's so many nature spirits. Helping in farming, woodlands. They're the sort of entities that keep nature working. When people say it's amazing how it does that. Well, no. These are the races that do that, keep the world, the system actually working. Anyway, we'll not get into that. But Where were we? So there we go. Within 50 years, there will be only 3 great nations. Then, within 50 years, there will be 18 years of war and cataclysms. Then the peoples of Agartha will leave their subterranean caverns and will appear on the surface of the earth. Now, to me, in my mind, this is what the elites are telling you to hate. These new breeds of people, amongst us, of course, that are trying to pull us back into some kind of balance. That's what people like David Icke and such are laying siege against, really. They just don't know it. Oh, there we are. Raimondo! Hello, Ray. Oh, you're doing well. RNA does exactly the same thing in 3 generations. Well, RNA, isn't that the... So DNA is the storage of the data, the codes, and the RNA moves the codes about, does it not? So if your body creates a new code, the RNA will pick it up and go and slot it in the data bank. That's how I understand it, Raimondo? What would you think to that? Is that on board? Horseshoe crabs. Let me have a look here. I'm missing something. What are you saying, you guys? Treen's late again. Oh, Treen. Honestly, you're such a naughty girl. But it doesn't matter. We don't care. And we're just glad you're here. So, the wife said, women can... So, I agree. Where are we? I'm going to go back up here, right? Okay. Control panel. I agree. Okay. The wife said men need to step up and women can be feminine. Absolutely. If men don't step up now and start to be male, the females are fucked. I decided I weren't going to swear today because I was very naughty last week. I was expleting everywhere. So my apologies. But no male is going to accept these ideas of females today, or women. You're insane. And we don't like it. It's ridiculous. And we know that you don't see it. You're just doing you. But to a male, I'm not talking about boys and persons, a male, you might be beautiful until you put the foreskins in your lips. Then you look like a fucking numpty. I've done it again, sorry. But you need to be told this stuff. If you females out there, as beautiful as you are looking for a male, you ain't ever going to find one wearing them stupid things on your fingers, sticking shit in your lips, showing everybody and his dog your ass and your fanny and your tits. No man wants to take his woman out so she can show her body off to the world. I'm not suggesting you cover up. I'm just saying, some of you girls, you might as well not have any clothes on. A male wouldn't want to take you out because it's clear you're showing yourself off because you want to attract somebody better than the one you've got at your side. So it's not going to happen. If males are going to step up to protect the females, there has to be some females to be worth protecting. And that's not the case. And a woman will never be a female because they're two separate entities. A female is the feminine aspect of man, and the body shows you that. A woman is a fallen female, and there we went through the Adam and Eve stuff. You don't want to be a woman, you want to be a female. Man, female. Like a male wants to be man, male. Because we have each has the other within it, and it's the balancing. If you bring yourself to balance, the male and the female within yourself, you would still be a female as a female. Same with a male. If you brought the balance of the feminine and the masculine in yourself, you're not going to be homosexual. Because you've not misunderstood that feminine appreciation when you see a male. You're not going to equate that to sexual. Now, I know I'm heading into dangerous water with that, but you can, as a male, you can appreciate a supreme warrior male, but it doesn't mean you want to get his bottom out and shag it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like a female can appreciate beauty in a female, it doesn't mean she wants to muff munch. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't. Anyway, let's not get off that, because obviously I'm going to upset folk, because not everybody's on that path, but this is how I've understood how we deal with certain energies that we have within us. Because then the system encourages you to, if you're not doing it correctly, the system is encouraging you to keep doing it incorrectly. That way you're not going to grow, you're not going to learn. Which is the machine, that's what its job is. You've not had a fag for 9 weeks, feeling smug. Well done, Debbie. Because I'm right at the point now where I'm thinking I might jack it again. Because the way I look is just, it improves me a million miles. The eyes, all the, round the eyes, it just goes back to like I'm 20 instead of 22. Yeah, anyway, I'm just being facetious. They have us all stressed out with nonsense. Very good to be able to give up smoking in these times. It is a legendary effort. Yeah, it is difficult. Twin says, hi Sean, late again. Yeah, you're very naughty. But we love you. Cheers, I went to this guy using quantum stuff. All very woo-woo, but it worked. Well, if it works, it doesn't matter. Just as long as he's not got you visiting his house at 3 o'clock in the morning while you're sleepwalking to do rude and naughty things, Deborah. You know what I mean? You've got to be careful with that hypnotism stuff. Interesting, Debbie. Pray tell more about the 12-week program. Me and Oz have spoken about this. Says the Mew. AGM says some quote comes from a film. You can breed a colour out in 3 generations. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and obviously it's going to be the choice of. So you'd breed. Let's say a white guy. Well, with no such thing as white guy. A pink guy would breed with a black guy. The child's going to be dark, but it's going to have Caucasian features. Pick your bloodline again, the right one again next time, and you'll have an increase in the darker. Yeah, so he's absolutely right. And this is the stuff, this is the way they operate and keep it off the table so we don't know. Only when you go up the degrees, but not the low degrees, you're talking about the top degrees. When you're showing yourself that you're good with this. Now, once you start to understand the world like this, you can also start to understand that the way the world's always been set is essential. Because the guy that the intelligence at the top, you couldn't expect him to live like the working class man. Yet the working class mindset, as it was, there isn't really one anymore. If anybody worked in an office, they were classed as complete garbage. Like my father was the worst working class hero you've ever known. It was quite ridiculous how extreme the working class mind was, that if you weren't working with a shovel, an hammer, a pickaxe or some such, you weren't a man. It was like, you know, come on, get a grip. But that's what they'd been taught. So saying RNA does exactly the same thing in 3 generations. He's got lots of high-tech stuff. I have a pendant thing that gets sent into info constantly. It's meant to repair DNA. Identify personality traits. Trauma communicates with your higher self. Well, why don't you just communicate with your higher self yourself? That's the trick. The kingdom you're seeking is within. If you're going outside, you're always running the risk, as an absolute, of understanding yourself through somebody else's censorship, somebody else's limitation. So you do have to be careful with this stuff, you know? It's like Reiki. If a Reiki practitioner isn't evolved themselves, then naturally the spirits that they've evoked that are carrying out this Reiki through them can only be as the same level as the administrator. So again, you've got to be careful with this stuff. It's not to say there aren't genuine ones out there, there are. And like attracts like, so you'll generally be attracted to one on similar frequency to yourself. If it's a natural event, if it's forced in some way, there's always a chance that you're not quite on the same vibrations. Then you wouldn't want to be doing anything like that with anybody, because you could be taking in corruptions that you've already achieved something and then it re-corrupts you. You have to be careful, because your DNA holds the codes that's been, all the codes latent in your genetic codes from the get-go, and you don't want to be activating codes that you don't want to be. Like, and when you read like Shipton, and she's saying, you know, man's going to fall to the ridiculous degrees, you're only opening up codes that your genetics have actually had to bring to the fore way back in time at some, you know, at some point. So, which is why television, you know, watching Gladiator can activate codes latent in your genetics from Roman days. And then it's activated. It is open. And you might end up falling foul of it and following it through. It's been really accurate when it scans and reports stuff that I'm aware of about myself. Well, that's good. AGM, protein repairs your MA naturally. RNA, sorry, naturally. Ray says, if, for example, you wanted to change the gene for reproduction, you could introduce the RNA strand to replace the DNA section. Then in 3 generations, many won't be able to reproduce. Excuse me. I don't think they've been that successful with that because of the degree to which they've had to push all this in the medical. I think the way that they're playing that game is birth control, so the condom, abortion, and then the promotion of homosexuality. Because that does build the satanic body of Satan. The mystical body of Satan, rather. That's this. I did actually do a report on the mystical body of Satan. Very, very interesting. And I'll put that up under this because you'll see what I'm saying. So all this abortion, birth control, etc., etc., you are affecting the natural creative force. Now you might say, yeah, but, well, okay. But so what that's saying is take a bit more responsibility in who you open your legs to, and you boys, where you stick it. Yeah. I think them are lessons a lot of us have learned, Generation X. Because a lot of us, so many of our generation, and baby boomers got divorced. Obviously, we married the wrong people. Yeah. So, again, very interesting, this kind of stuff. So you wouldn't need abortion if you put the effort into choosing wisely. You'd never even have to contemplate abortion. Or even contraception. Or, as the old Catholic way was, you pull your hair. Well, I think we were all like that in the 80s. That's what we all did. We were very good at pulling your hair. What an absolute waste of a good sex. That, anyway. Yeah, so interesting. Lol, I know exactly what you're saying, bro. That's AGM. So, confidence issues due to upbringing, a weakness in gastric system. I have Crohn's, to mention a couple. It identifies body weaknesses as well as personality. Well, I'm not going anywhere near it then. So, confidence issues. Oh, you've done that, sorry. Well said, Sean. Media bombards us with programming. Women from the 1950s to today, chalk cheese almost. Godness is me, what has happened. It's sad because these youngsters have no idea. They think that God's gift, sliced bread, la 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 la. You are never going to have any kind of a settled family life while you're attracting every fruit bat that's out in town pissed as a fart. You know? Especially today. Look, when we were growing up, England, the culture that was England, the culture that was Scotland, the culture that was Welsh, we were all the same culture. In that our girls could walk around naked if they wanted. There were very few amongst us who would want to go and rape them, want to stalk them. You know what I'm saying? We don't live in that culture anymore. We have a lot more different cultures in, and they don't have that self-control. And that is a fact. So, there we go. Girlies, get a grip. Start to reckon with that stuff and take responsibility. Would be my opinion. If you wanted to find the male you think you're trying to find. Heads up there. Oh, a few retracted there. You've been naughty, you boys. They changed mosquitoes in 3 generations playing with RNA. Mosquitoes? Did they? Oh. Mary Whitehouse had the right idea. She thought she was, because all she was doing was preventing it from coming through on the television, because television is such a powerful thing. And the likes of Mary Whitehouse prevented me as a kid seeing stuff and subject matter that I didn't need to be concerned with at that age, because I was going to find about it all by myself, watching girls doing keep the sunny side up, and the other side too, in the schoolyard, while we all looked up the skirts. And that were at primary school. So we were all learning about it all on our own. We didn't need it shoved down our faces from teachers. And we certainly didn't need it coming through the television. We might find the odd wank mag occasionally when we were youngsters, and we might spend an hour absolutely horrified staring at it, thinking, these girlies are disgusting, I'm not going anywhere near that thing, it's a big hole. And we all did it, did we not? And then you'd have your hour gone and you'd think no more about sex or about your private parts. You certainly wouldn't be right bothered about touching yourself. Because once that does happen, little boys, well, I mean, they just go at it hell for leather, because it's quite pleasurable, isn't it, when you don't know what it is. Of course, I thought I broke mine at one point, because, yeah, anyway, never mind. I'm getting a bit effort. What are we doing there? You're getting me going. Medic sounds like Marduk a little bit. Well, yeah. So where were we on this shindig? So we're on the Agartha, and we're going to have to pull off this in a minute, because it's took longer than I thought to go through this. Men will increasingly get their souls. The greatest corruption will reign on earth. Men will become like bloodthirsty animals, thirsting for the blood of their brothers. The crescent will become obscured, and its followers will descend into lies of perpetual warfare. The crowns of kings will fall. There will be a terrible war between the earth's peoples. Entire nations will die. Hunger, crimes unknown to law, formerly unthinkable to the world. The persecuted will demand the attention of the whole world. The ancient roads will be filled with multitudes going from one place to another. Well, the Silk Road's full of that, isn't it, at the moment? The greatest and most beautiful cities will perish by fire. Families will be dispersed. Faith and love will disappear. The world will be emptied. Within 50 years, there will be only 3 great nations. Oh, we've done it! We've done that. So we'll stop there at Nicholas R. Roerich, and we'll maybe continue that at another point. But I think I put the best first, but there's Edgar Cayce is in there, Nostradamus is in there, there are quite a lot of Native American prophecies in there. Of course, I'll put it up and you can have a younger. What's Dirty Mags for all fair edges, young spunkers, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. You'd find him, wouldn't you, in your mate's dad's garage. He's, guy that your dad's mate who were always mechanicking. He'd have them all in there tucked up. So when he's run out of air from wife, and he'd be in there playing with himself, pretending he's mechanicking. Yeah. Interesting times. I wouldn't want to do them again, though, I have to say. So we'll leave the prophecy at Nicholas R. Roerich because we can. And so I think what we need to look at now is the old Culpepers, which is turning into quite a page. So what I've actually done is I've moved. So I had a key which I'd put at the bottom of it. So I've put that at the top now. So various conditions, parts of your body I've just labelled, and as we go through this Culpeper, I'm now adding it to each individual one. So if you actually want to take it serious and start to use this herbal stuff while you still can, and get it dried out so you've got plenty, and if a lot of people start to do that, we're going to be able to get through a lot of this stuff, especially if what Shipton's talking, we're looking at a major biological outpouring as by the end of this conflagration between Russia, China and the West. And of course, when you look at it like that, we all have to be ready for war, regardless, when it comes and buckle down to it. Even though we all know that it's been manipulated, at the end of the day, if it comes upon us, each and every one of us is going to have to pull together. So for all my wind and piss in relation to screaming at the way it's been set up, the fact that our military commanders are lying to our soldiers, our politicians are lying to us, is being talked up. So if we can't see that now and stop it in its tracks now, then it's going to come upon us, and every single one of us is going to have to turn straight to deal with that. You can't start causing havoc once it kicks off. You know, we've got this time of rebellion. Now, once war kicks off like that, you can't be doing rebellion. And I certainly wouldn't be doing rebellion. I'd be full on in the mix, in whatever capacity I could fulfill at my age. But of course, I am born legacy, so it'd still be good. Just another thing, for if there's any Americans watching, I've noticed there's a major rise in this idea that it's dangerous to go into a lot of these American national parks now. And there's a lot, the 401 missing persons, etc., in ex-copper. But what I'm also noticing, a lot of this stuff is coming out of ex-Navy SEALs. Are they using the Special Forces as a propagandist arm to stop people having the thoughts of, when things start getting bad, running into the forest and making their own way? I really think that's what they're doing, and it's the Navy SEALs specifically that appear to be pushing that script, because I am seeing it as a script. I'm not suggesting for a minute there is nothing untoward going on in any forest, but the way it's crafted, this, it's so well crafted. In my opinion, if you're an American, give consideration to the fact, you know, our militaries are so co-opted. There's a good chance that the SEALs themselves, some of them, are playing into this potential script to stop you contemplating off into the National Reserves. Because, of course, it'd be a lot more difficult for them to deal with folk if you're spread out across the US. I mean, at the moment, it's easy while you're in the cities and the hick towns, as they call them. But you get out into the wilderness and you've got abundance of everything. And I think it's a script to preempt the weak from contemplating doing that. So that's a thought I'd ask my American brothers and sisters to keep on board. Liz Truss wins. As she will. Is she winning? Well, to be honest, even I don't want to see Sunak. What the hell does a guy who's worth 730 million want a job that pays 162,000? It's got nothing to do with money. It's obviously power tripping, and he's obviously, it would just bolster more and more hatred between the races on England. Let's be frank about it. So no, I don't want Sunak at all. And people can say I'm racist if you want. I don't want to see a foreign face on the Prime Minister's seat in this country. Just like India won't want to see a white honky. Africa doesn't want to see white honkies. You know? We don't. Pakistanis don't want to see a white honky. Arabs don't want to see a white honky. Same thing. I don't want to see a coloured guy atop of my nation's politics. And I've no shame in saying that. That is the way it is. I don't want it any other way. So I'll be glad it's Truss, not because I like Truss. She's a complete fruit bat. She is tied in with the Arabs, this new leader they've got going, who's dangerous. He's a dangerous guy, this fella. I forgot his name. But commonly known as Young Spunkers, we've done that. Putin has been drugged. Putin is still refusing to sell oil, etc. for dollars, pounds, as he claims they ain't worth shit. So he's selling in rubles only. Well, we discussed that a bit last week, I think, Ray, but what he's actually trying to, what they're actually with BRICS, what they're actually trying to get rid of first is the petrodollar, which isn't the same as the the dollar being the reserve currency. You know, the petrodollar is secondary to the dollar as reserve currency. And remember, in the 80s, the Americans had started to run computer simulated scenarios. Weren't there a film out in the 80s where this young kid managed to stop a nuclear conflagration when AI took over? I forgot what it's called. So there were your telegraphing of what they were doing, and they've been running simulations like this since the 80s. And some that I was aware of maybe 10, 15 years ago, they'd done a lot in relation to all this shenanigans here. And it always set it, obviously, so that the dollar actually came out on top. So, we'll see. You see, there's nothing wrong with the dollar. There's nothing wrong with the pound, the franc, the lira. The problem we have is the central banks, private hands, are producing it for our governments at interest. You can never pay it back. It's impossible. That's the war games. That's it. Thanks, Ray. So the 80s, they were doing these simulations. So don't kid yourself that the priesthood don't know how this is going to end. But, of course, that's how they think it's going to go. There's always surprises. And if we go for another Third World War, it's probably going to be a lot of surprises for everybody on all counts. So, you know, we have to keep these things in mind. But we all need to start prepping for this, because if you don't think you're going to be living through it yourself, your offspring are. And there's in La La Land at the moment. Doesn't mean they'll be like that when they've had a bit of life and they realise it's not easy. But we have to push a system ready so that it's ready to be operated when this thing kicks off. Because it's looking like within the next few years, I would suggest, it's probably going to kick off unless there's some major event that brokers peace. But I'm not seeing that, because nobody seems to be, doesn't seem to be any governments moving in that position, to be honest. Dollar and a pound and all of the countries have plummeted. Well, they have to do, Ray. For the one world currency, all currencies have to be the same value. We've known that for a long time. 10 years ago, the pound would double the Australian dollar. It were nearly 1 1/3 of the American dollar. Gordon Brown were a big player on that. The uber communist bum. When he sold our reserves before gold went through the roof. The dollar, yeah, correct. Even the Asian community are claiming that. Yeah. What we need to do as man, male or female, is come to the idea, because it's a fact, that you've been deceived. Everything you think you know, everything you think you believe, everything you think you're operating on is operating on the path that the deceiver has set. Iblis for the Muslims, Satan for the majority of others. The antagonist, if you want to cover the entire thing, that's what he is, the antagonist. And his role is to test humanity. Yeah, it's no use hating Satan, is it? If you're hating Satan, it's because you can't get out of his grip, because your behaviour is following his ordainment. That's what you're doing. And so when you get mad at yourself, like I said before, you tend to go insular, and then you become angry, and then it turns into violence on others. But basically at the core of it is because you hate yourself. And that's where the mystery school initiation process of seeing the dweller on the threshold, your shadow self, is, you know, that is the it is an absolute in moving on the spiritual path in a way that you can you're not just learning it, you are operating with it, as so to speak. Because until you know and accept your own darkness, you can't recognise it in yourself, unless you're a smart cookie and you can take it from book. You can see it in your own studies. But in general terms, if you can't see your dark side, the shadow of who you are, potentially it's there, then the journey after that is you can see your behaviours that are in tune with that. And that's why it's a consistent cleansing. And you're pulling yourself back to balance, because that's where your soul's at. It's at a perfect point of balance, but utilising both masculine and the feminine. And there's an old adage from the old wise masters that, and I'm not talking about the theosophical masters when I talk about masters, know that. They say that, I forgot. Oh, what are we talking about then? I forgot, it's gone. So, anyway, on with the Culpepper. My apologies, chaps. So we're up to now water betony. It says cold. Also broomwort, and in Yorkshire, bishop's leaves. Description: the water betony rises up with square hard greenish stalks, sometimes brown, set with broad dark green leaves, dented about the edges with notches, somewhat resembling the leaves of the wood betony, but much larger too, for the most part set at a joint. The flowers are many, set at the tops of stalks and branches, being round-bellied, open at the brims, and divided into two parts, the uppermost being like a hood, and the lowest like a hip hanging down, of a dark red colour, which, pressing away, there come in their places small round heads, with small points in the ends, wherein lie small and brownish seeds. The root is a thick bush of firings and threads growing from the head. Place: it groweth by ditch sides, brooks, and other water courses, generally through this land, which is England, and is seldom found far from the water fields. Water sides. Time: it flowereth about July, and the seed is ripe in August. Government and virtues. Water betony is a herb of Jupiter in Cancer, and is appropriated more to wounds and hurts in the breast than wood betony, which follows. It is an excellent remedy for sick hogs. It is of a cleansing quality. The leaves bruised and applied are effectual for all cold and filthy ulcers, and especially if the juice of the leaves be boiled with a little honey, and then dipped therein and the sores dressed therewith, as also for bruises or hurts, whether inward or outward. The distilled water of the leaves is used for the same purposes, as also to bathe the face or hands spotted or blemished, or discoloured by sunburning. Pliny saith that serpents, if they are enclosed or surrounded with this herb, will immediately begin fighting and kill each other presently. I confess I do not much fancy distilled waters. I don't. Now, let me tell you why. It's totally clear of any garbage chemistry and shit, but the whole idea of good water is to help your body, help your body's electricity flow on the ley line grid you've got. You know, they do the acupuncture on. As we know, we've discussed, salt enhances that, but so does good water. Sugar decreases the electrical impulses, which is why if you do a lot of sugar, the only thing you need to do is take a little bit more salt than you naturally would. You're balancing then. So if you love your sugar, it doesn't matter, apart from your teeth are going to rot, and cancers and fungus feed on it. But if you're talking about balancing it, just take enough salt as well, and you'll keep the chemical balance. It's simple, you know. Says, I confess I do not much fancy distilled waters. I mean such waters are a distilled cold. So yeah, sorry, distilled water also decreases the electrical conductivity in your body, and you need to keep that in mind. But again, bits and bats of everything is fine. But I'd say you want to go with the wrapping, the 12 wrap, 6 one way, 6 another, around one of those, I forgot what they're called, big magnets at your source of your water, or at least 8 offshoots, so that you can constantly feed that through your filter system for drinking and for cooking. And Ken Wheeler has a video. In fact, one of somebody who watches but doesn't comment sent me a video thinking it wasn't it, and I forgot to respond. Actually, you just reminded me. It is the one I was talking about, but he has done others. He's a great, but he's just got that many videos up. It's difficult to find his stuff. I confess I do not much fancy distilled waters. I mean, such waters as are distilled cold, some virtue of the herb they may happen to have. It were a strange thing else, but this I am confident of, that being distilled in a pewter still is the vulgar fashion, is both the chemical oil and salt are left behind, unless you burn them, and then all is spoiled, even the water which is good for as little as can be, by such distillation. So he's actually in agreement with what I've always thought, so I like that. Now, wood betony. So that's water betony, this is wood betony. Description. The common or wood betony have many leaves rising from the root, which are somewhat broad and round at the ends, roundly dented about the edges, landing upon long footstalks, from among which rise up small, square, slender, but yet upright, airy stalks, with some leaves thereon, 2 apiece, at joints, smaller than the lower, whereon are at several spiked heads of flowers like lavender, but thicker and shorter for most part, and of a reddish or purple colour, spotted with white spots both in upper and lower part, the seeds being contained within the husks that hold the flowers are blackish, somewhat long and uneven. The roots are many white thready strings. The stalk perisheth, but the root with some leaves thereon abides all the winter. The whole plant is somewhat small. Place, it groweth frequently in woods and delighteth in shady places. Time, it flowereth in July, after which the seed is quickly ripe, yet it is in its prime in May. Government and virtues. This herb is appropriated to the planet Jupiter and under the sign Aries. Antonius Musa, physician to the Emperor Augustus Caesar, wrote a peculiar book on the virtues of this herb, and amongst other virtues saith of it that it preserves the lives and bodies of men from the danger of epidemical diseases, and from witchcrafts also. Good. It is found by daily experience to be good for many diseases. It helpeth those that loathe or cannot digest their meat, those who have weak stomachs, or for belchings, or a continual rising in their stomach. I think that means being sick, or when you get the heartburn. Using it familiarly, either green or dry, either the herb or in the stomach, using it familiarly, either green or dry. Either the herb or root or the flowers, drunk in broth or meat, or made into conserve, syrup, water, electuary, or powder, as every one may best frame themselves unto, or as the same time or season requireth. Taken any of the aforesaid ways, it helpeth the jaundice, falling sickness, and palsy, convulsions or shrinking of the sinews, the gout, and those that are inclined to dropsies, and those that have continued pains in the head, so headaches, although inclining to frenzy. I think frenzy is what he'd class as, what do they call them? What do they call it? Migraine, sorry. The powder mixed with those that have continual pains in the head, although inclining to... The powder mixed with pure honey is no less available for all sorts of coughs and colds, wheezings or shortness of breath. So that's asthma. Distillations of thin rheum upon the lungs, which causes consumptions. The decoction made with mead and a little pennyroyal is good for those that are troubled with putrid augurs, whether quotidian, tertian, or quartan, whatever that might be, and to draw down and evacuate the blood and humours, which by falling into the eyes do hinder the sight. The decoction thereof made in wine and taken killeth the worms in the belly, open obstructions both of the liver and the spleen, cureth flitches and pains in the back or side, the torments and griping pains of the bowels, and the wind colic, and mixed with honey purgeth the belly, helpeth to bring down women's courses, and is of special use for those that are troubled with the falling down of the womb and pains thereof, and causes an easy and speedy delivery of women in childbirth. It helpeth also to break and expel the stone, either in the bladder or kidneys. The decoction with wine gargled in the mouth easeth the toothache. It is commended against the stinging of venomous serpents or biting of mad dogs. So, rabies. Being used inwardly and applied outwardly to the place. A dram of the powder of betony, taken with a little honey, in some vinegar, doth wonderfully refresh those that are overwearied by travel. It stayeth bleeding at the mouth or nose, and helpeth those that piss or spit blood, and those that are bursted or have a rupture, and is good for such as are bruised by any fall or otherwise. The green herb bruised, or the juice applied to any inward hurt, or outward green wound in the head or body, will quickly heal, and also close it up. As also any veins or sinews that are cut, and will draw forth any broken bone or splinter, thorn, or other thing gotten into the flesh. It is no less profitable for old sores or filthy ulcers, even although fistulous and hollow, but some do advise to add a little fiat for this purpose. I'm not sure what that is. Being applied with a little hog's lard, it helpeth the plague sore, and all other boils and pushes. The fumes of the decoction, while it is warm, received by funnel into the ears, easeth the pains of them. So earache. Destroyeth the worms, and cureth the running sores in them. Running sores in worms. And the juice dropped into them does the same. The root of betony is displeasing both to the taste and stomach, whereas the leaves and flowers, by their sweet and spicy taste, are comfortable both in meat and medicine. There are some of the many virtues Antonius Musa appropriates to betony. It is very precious herb, without doubt, and very proper to be kept in every house, prepared in a syrup, conserve oil, ointment, and plaster. The flowers are usually conserved. So there we go. Another absolutely amazing piece of kit. The betony, wood and water. What a good one. What are you saying, you guys? CBD oil is good for Crohn's. Yeah, but everybody's obsessed with CBD. Look at what we're finding going through this, and everything here grows in England. On England's green and pleasant. In your garden. You don't have to go Himalayas. It's a centre of Amazon. You know, this is it. Good old English herbs. What you're saying, you only have in control of two things. Your thoughts and your actions, exactly. And you can't control anybody else's. Because the urge is still there. If you force it, they're going to do it at some point. You focus on yourself and all is well. Decent salt to it. What? To the distilled? Well, that makes sense. And then in that sense, it's just a bit dead. It's dead water, isn't it? Good evening and blessings from Philadelphia. Good evening to you, disciple of the Messiah. You're Mr. Gooden. As you know, I try to stay in love, keep my neodymium. That's it. That's the magnet. Now, the big things is, so you want one about that big, and you need to get, so you're wrapping, copper is better. So if you get the right thing, copper, you know, I forgot, is it 10 mil? And you want to do it 6 ways one way and 6 ways another. Around this magnum, so you're giving it 12 passes. And that will wipe the hard drive of the water, everything off it, and make it totally clear of all genetic memories. So that's, in fact, I will find that video and put it on under this, so you can see Ken's video on it. He doesn't show you how to make it, but he shows you it made, and I think a bit of back engineering cracked it. So CBD oil for me, it's okay, it has its play, but it's not the big, it's not Barabbas's bollocks, is what I'd say. It really isn't at all. Try taking your water out of the plastic and put the water in a glass to refrigerate it, tastes exceedingly better. Yeah, I used to have a dispenser. The trick with the bottled water is don't let it get in sunlight. If it gets warm, it leaches it in like you wouldn't believe. Because obviously I have it in my car for work, and sometimes if it's had some, I might as well just chewed on the whole bottle and swallowed it. Try and take your water out. Yeah, no. I cut out dairy, sugar, gluten, and I wouldn't do that, did I? How are you finding your life plus Ray? What is Life Plus supplement? Liver issues, kidney problems at the moment. Have you? Well, you want milk thistle, my good man. And I get on Culpepers. There's tons on there for liver. Tons of it. Everything on hold till results come back from hospital. Just go through this page, Ray. There's stuff, because I've put key at top. Just go to liver. It gives you all that we've gone through so far, and then you can expand your knowledge on that particular one. And you can probably just get a good organic one offline. What book are we reading from Brother Sean? It's Culpepers Herbal, and I will put it under it. So he's an English physician, an astrophysicist, a very clever guy. And at the end of these live streams, we've been going through 2 herbs and what they do. But I've created a page on the website. You go on it. The first is a key, just gives you all different conditions. I add it as I find new, and then which herbs are associated with that particular condition or organ. And then down the page, it gives you the full description of that herb as we go. It's also my intent at some time to add to those descriptions, because there's more modern descriptions for each herb as well, if I feel it's going to be beneficial. So I'm going to try to create a good compendium on this page, easy accessible for people to basically get on with their own concoctions, or look at what they need to buy offline or wherever you get it from. But just keep away from Holland and Barrett, because they put in polymer in everything. So yeah. Well, neodymium, magnet and copper wrapped round 6 ways each way. That's great information. Yeah, and I will put the video up of Ken's so you can see the finished product. I think the magnet he uses is quite about $500. So I don't know what it's going to come to here, but we're almost all at the same value now in our currencies. I've vortexed my water with magnets. It's like a blender, yeah. Slipknot, you've used a lot of this stuff, haven't you, on back of this for your kidney stones, haven't you? Maybe you want to have a chat with Ray. Just let him know what you did. But Ray, first thing you want to get onto, mate, is milk thistle. It's amazing. It opens your bile ducts, and then all they can detox. The only thing I'd say is, if you're ever doing detox kind of stuff, if you want to piss immediately. Don't hang on. If you want to shit, get toilet and pump it out. Even though only a rabbit poo comes out, your body is trying to eject it. It's just as important when you're detoxing metals and stuff like this, that you get it out as soon as you get the urge. And sick as another way in your body. So be ready for any ways your body might choose to detox when you do these things. But in general, it's piss and poo. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of another good live stream. Thank you very much for joining me, all of you. I really do appreciate your time and effort to listen to my ramblings. Give it a like, would you? Let's see if we can push this channel up a little bit, and keep it going, and keep off all the nonsense stuff that they're all excited about, and we shouldn't really be having or upsetting anybody, giving us any problems. So, ladies and gentlemen and friends, I will say to you, thank you again, and till the next time.
electronic